The champagne was flowing, the diamonds were sparkling, and the laughter in the room was deafening, until it wasn't. We've all seen bad marriages, but what Marcus Sterling did to his pregnant wife, Subeo, at the most prestigious gala of the year, goes beyond cruelty. He thought she was just a poor girl from nowhere. He thought her silence was weakness. He was wrong. In this story, you're going to witness a betrayal so cold it will make your blood boil, and a karmic twist so satisfying you'll want to stand up and cheer. Because when the doors opened and the man everyone feared walked in, he didn't walk toward the billionaire host. He walked toward the crying woman in the corner. Let's get into the story. The air inside the Sterling family's sprawling estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, smelled of expensive lilies and old money. It was the 60th birthday of Victoria Sterling, the matriarch of the Sterling logistics empire, and the theme was gold and glory. Every guest in attendance had a net worth that could buy a small island. Men in bespoke Italian suits swirled aged Scotch, discussing mergers and acquisitions. Women in haute couture dresses that cost more than a mid-range car stood in tight circles, judging everyone who walked through the double oak doors. And then there was Subeo. At 7 months pregnant, Subeo felt less like a wife and more like an inconvenient piece of furniture that didn't match the decor. Her feet were swollen, throbbing inside heels she only wore because Marcus insisted that flats are for peasants. She wore a pale blue maternity dress she had sewn herself. It was elegant, modest, and made with love. But in this room of Versace and Dior, it looked homemade. She stood near the buffet table, nursing a glass of sparkling water, trying to catch her husband's eye across the room. Marcus Sterling was handsome in that sharp, predatory way. He was 32, the CEO of Sterling Logistics, and the apple of his mother's eye. He was holding court near the fireplace, laughing loudly at a joke made by a senator. Subeo watched him, her hand instinctively resting on her baby bump. She hadn't spoken to him in 3 hours. Not since they got in the car, where he had looked at her dress and sighed. "Is that really what you're wearing? Mother is going to have a fit." "It's comfortable, Marcus," Subeo had whispered, fighting back tears. "And we're on a budget since you cut off my access to the joint account." "I cut it off because you spend recklessly on baby junk we don't need," he had snapped, checking his reflection in the rearview mirror. "Just try to blend in. Don't embarrass me tonight. There are investors here." Now, standing alone in the corner, Subeo felt the weight of those words. "Don't embarrass me." A waiter passed by with a tray of caviar blinis. Subeo reached for one. She hadn't eaten since breakfast due to morning sickness, but before her hand could touch the napkin, a voice sliced through the air. "Oh, careful, dear. We wouldn't want you to spill on that quaint little craft project you're wearing." Subeo froze. She turned to see Victoria Sterling, her mother-in-law, holding a glass of champagne like a weapon. Victoria was draped in gold silk, dripping in sapphires. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. It never did. "Happy birthday, Victoria," Subeo said, her voice trembling slightly. "You look beautiful." Victoria looked Subeo up and down, her gaze lingering on the baby bump with disdain. "And you look massive. Really, Subeo, couldn't you have found something that hides the shape better? You look like you're about to burst. It's unsightly for the guests." "I'm pregnant, Victoria. It's natural," Subeo defended herself softly. Victoria took a sip of her drink, leaning in close. "It's common. That's what it is. Marcus has such a bright future. It's a shame he's tethered to someone who doesn't understand the art of presentation." "Who are you, again?" "Oh, right. the girl from the coffee shop. It was a dig she used often. Subeo had indeed been working as a barista when she met Marcus 3 years ago. He had been charming then, humble even. He had told her he loved her simplicity. He had lied. "I'm his wife," Subeo said, lifting her chin. "For now," Victoria whispered, winking before turning away to greet a CEO's wife with a fake, high-pitched laugh. Subeo felt the tears prickling her eyes. She needed Marcus. She needed him to put his arm around her, to tell his mother to stop, to validate her existence. She began to waddle through the crowd, dodging judgmental glares, making her way toward the fireplace. She finally reached him. He was deep in conversation with Julian Thorne, a potential investor. "Marcus?" she said softly, touching his elbow. Marcus flinched, as if he'd been burned. He turned, his eyes narrowing when he saw her. The annoyance was instant. "What is it, Subeo? I'm busy." I just need to sit down for a moment," she whispered. "My back is killing me, and your mother just—" Marcus cut her off, his voice rising just enough for the surrounding circle to hear. "Subeo, honestly, can you not handle yourself for 2 hours? This is a business function. I don't have time to rub your feet." Julian Thorne chuckled awkwardly. "Pregnancy hormones, eh, Marcus?" Marcus forced a laugh. "You have no idea, Julian. It's endless complaining. Look, Subeo, go find a chair in the back room or something. Stop hovering. You're distracting the guests." He turned his back on her. Just like that. Dismissed like a servant. Subeo stood there, her face burning. She could feel the eyes of the elite boring into her. She wasn't just invisible anymore. She was a nuisance. She turned to leave, to find a dark corner to cry in. But the worst was yet to come. An hour later, the music stopped. It was time for the toasts and the gift-giving. This was the highlight of the Sterling parties, a grotesque display of wealth where people competed to see who could give Victoria the most expensive item. Subeo had taken a seat at the far end of the long dining table, near the kitchen doors. She had hoped to stay hidden, but Victoria had insisted everyone gather for the spectacle. "To my wonderful mother," Marcus announced, standing at the head of the room with a microphone, "who built this family from the ground up." Applause rippled through the room. "For your 60th, I wanted to get you something that represents time," Marcus said, signaling a servant. A velvet box was brought forward. Marcus opened it to reveal a vintage Patek Philippe watch, encrusted with diamonds, valued at $200,000. The room gasped. Victoria feigned shock, clutching her chest. "Oh, Marcus, it's perfection." One by one, guests presented their gifts. A designer handbag from the mayor, a thoroughbred horse from the CEO of a rival firm. The pile of luxury grew. Then Victoria took the microphone. Her eyes scanned the room, landing maliciously on Subeo at the back table. "I believe everyone has presented a token of their affection," Victoria purred. "Except my daughter-in-law. Subeo? Did you bring anything, dear? Or did you forget amidst all your resting?" The room went silent. All heads turned to Subeo. Subeo's heart hammered against her ribs. She stood up slowly, her hands shaking. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, flat package wrapped in brown paper. It wasn't flashy. It didn't sparkle. I made something," Subeo said, her voice barely a whisper. "Speak up, dear," Victoria called out. "We can't hear you over the sound of mediocrity." Scattered laughter broke out. Marcus put a hand over his face, shaking his head. Subeo walked forward, the long walk of shame, and placed the package on the table next to the diamond watch. It looked pathetic in comparison. Victoria picked it up with 2 fingers, as if it were contaminated. She ripped the paper open. Inside was a leather-bound photo album. An album?" Victoria asked, arching a brow. "It's a collection of photos from when Marcus was a baby," Subeo explained, her voice gaining a tiny bit of strength. "I spent months tracking down the negatives from your old neighbors, restoring them. I know you lost all your family photos in the flood of '98. I thought you'd like to have those memories back." It was a thoughtful, deeply sentimental gift. It had taken Subeo hundreds of hours and the last of her savings to pay a restoration expert. Victoria flipped through 2 pages, looked at a photo of herself in a ragged coat holding a baby Marcus, and sneered. "Memories?" Victoria laughed, a cold, harsh sound. "You dug up pictures of when we were poor? You brought this trash into my home to remind everyone that we started with nothing?" "No, You thought what?" Marcus snapped, stepping in. He snatched the album from his mother's hands. He looked at it, seeing his own face as a poor child. He looked at the elite guests staring at him. He felt the shame of his past bubbling up. Instead of defending his wife's effort, he chose his ego. "This is embarrassing, Subeo," Marcus hissed into the microphone, perhaps forgetting it was on. "You bring a $10 scrapbook to a $1 million party? Are you trying to humiliate us?" "Marcus, I restored them," Subeo pleaded, tears spilling over. "It's your history." "It's garbage!" Marcus shouted. With a violent motion, Marcus threw the album. It didn't land on the table. It slid across the polished floor, stopping near the trash can. "Get out," Marcus said, pointing to the door. "Go home. You've done enough damage for one night. Take your cheap dress and your cheap sentimentality and get out of my sight." The room was deadly silent. No one moved. No one defended the pregnant woman, standing alone in the center of the room, tears streaming down her face. Subeo looked at Marcus, really looked at him. She saw the cruelty in his eyes, the weakness in his soul. "You're going to regret this, Marcus," she whispered. "The only thing I regret," he sneered, "is marrying a nobody." Subeo turned. She didn't run. She walked, head held high despite the pain, toward the double doors. Just as her hand touched the brass handle to leave, the doors swung open from the outside. 2 large men in black tactical suits stepped in, wearing earpieces. They scanned the room. The atmosphere shifted instantly, the guests confused. Then a 3rd figure walked in. He was an older man, perhaps 65, with silver hair and a beard that looked like it was carved from granite. He wore a suit that whispered of power far beyond anyone in that room. He didn't look like a CEO. He looked like a king. It was Arthur Blackwood. The room gasped collectively. Arthur Blackwood was the titan of industry. He owned Blackwood Global, the conglomerate that was currently looking to acquire, or destroy, companies like Sterling Logistics. He was a myth, a ghost, a man who ate billionaires for breakfast. Marcus's jaw dropped. Mr. Blackwood, we didn't know you were coming. It's an honor. Please come in." Marcus rushed forward, stepping over the photo album his wife had made, pushing past Subeo to get to the billionaire. Arthur Blackwood didn't even look at Marcus. His cold, steel-grey eyes were fixed on one person. He walked right past Marcus's outstretched hand. He walked past a stunned Victoria. He stopped in front of Subeo. The room held its breath. Why was the titan of industry standing in front of the crying, pregnant nobody? Arthur Blackwood's face, known for being made of stone, softened. A single tear escaped his eye. He reached out and gently cupped Subeo's face. "I'm sorry I'm late, Elara," he said, using her birth name, his voice booming through the silent hall. "Daddy is here now." Marcus froze. The color drained from Victoria's face. Subeo looked up at the most powerful man in the world and sobbed. "Take me home, Papa." Arthur looked up. his eyes turning into glacial ice as he looked at Marcus. "You called her a nobody," Arthur said, his voice low and dangerous. "You just humiliated the sole heiress to the Blackwood Empire." The silence in the Sterling ballroom wasn't just quiet, it was heavy. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room, replaced by a suffocating pressure. The champagne glasses stopped clinking. The gossip stopped. The only sound was the sharp intake of breath from Victoria Sterling, who looked as if she had just swallowed a shard of glass. Marcus stood frozen, his hand still half raised in a pathetic gesture of greeting that had been ignored. He looked from the imposing figure of Arthur Blackwood to his wife, Subeo, who was weeping into the billionaire's expensive Italian lapel. "Father," Marcus stammered, his voice cracking. "Subeo, what is going on? You told me your father was a retired mechanic in Ohio." Arthur Blackwood didn't release his daughter. He turned his head slowly, fixing Marcus with a stare that could peel paint off a wall. "She told you that," Arthur rumbled, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings, "because she wanted to know if you loved her, or if you just loved the checkbook attached to her name. We had a bet, Ilara and I. I told her that men in this circle are vipers. She told me I was wrong. She told me she met a man who loved her simplicity." Arthur paused, looking down at the cheap maternity dress Subeo wore, the one Victoria had mocked moments ago. "It seems," Arthur said, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper, "that I won the bet." Victoria Sterling, ever the opportunist, tried to salvage the sinking ship. She stepped forward, her face rearranging itself into a mask of frantic politeness. "Mr. Blackwood," she began, her voice trembling, "surely this is a misunderstanding. A prank? Subeo never mentioned. We treated her like family. We were just having a bit of fun. You know how family dynamic—" "Stop," Arthur commanded. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. The single word slammed into Victoria like a physical blow. Arthur gently pulled away from Subeo, keeping one protective arm around her shoulders. He walked, slowly, deliberately, toward the trash can where the photo album lay. The room watched, mesmerized. The titan of industry, a man who moved markets with a phone call, bent down. He retrieved the brown paper package. He dusted it off with his own handkerchief. He opened it, looking at the restored photos of a young, impoverished Victoria and Marcus. "You called this garbage," Arthur said, holding the album up. "My daughter spent 3 months tracking down the negatives. She called in favors from archivists I didn't even know she knew. She did this because she thought you had a heart." Arthur closed the album and handed it to one of his bodyguards. "Secure this. It's the only valuable thing in this room." Marcus finally found his voice, panic setting in. "Subeo, baby, please, tell him. Tell him we love each other. I was just stressed. The investors, the party. You know how I get. I didn't mean to throw it. I swear." He took a step toward her. "Stay back." The shout didn't come from Arthur. It came from Subeo. She turned to face her husband. Her eyes, usually so warm and forgiving, were red-rimmed and dull. The humiliation of the last 3 years, culminating in tonight's public execution of her dignity, had finally broken something inside her. Or perhaps it had built something new. "You didn't mean it?" Subeo asked, her voice shaking but audible. "Marcus, you told me I was embarrassing you because I was pregnant. You told me my dress was cheap. You let your mother call me a nobody. You didn't just throw a gift, Marcus. You threw me away." "I can fix it," Marcus pleaded, sweating profusely now. "Subeo, you're carrying my child. Our child. We are a family." Arthur stepped in front of Subeo, blocking Marcus's view. You are not family. You are a mistake. A mistake we are correcting tonight." Arthur signaled to his security team. "Escort Mrs. Blackwood, Ms. Blackwood, to the car. Carefully." As the bodyguards moved to flank Subeo, the stress of the evening finally took its physical toll. Subeo gasped, clutching her abdomen. Her face went ashen white. "Daddy," she whimpered, her knees buckling. "It hurts." The room erupted into chaos. Arthur caught her before she hit the floor, his composure shattering into pure parental panic. "Elara, get the medic! Now!" Arthur roared. Marcus tried to rush forward. "Subeo!" One of Arthur's guards, a man the size of a vending machine, stepped into Marcus's path. He didn't strike Marcus, he simply put a hand on Marcus's chest and shoved. Marcus flew backward, tripping over his own feet and landing hard on his backside in the middle of the dance floor. "Do not come near her," the guard growled. Arthur scooped his pregnant daughter up in his arms as if she weighed nothing. He rushed toward the doors, the guests parting like the Red Sea. At the doorway, Arthur paused for 1 second. He didn't look back, but his voice carried back to the trembling Sterling family. "If anything happens to my grandson," Arthur promised, "I will not just bankrupt you, Marcus. I will hunt you." And then they were gone. The sound of the Blackwood motorcade speeding away faded into the night, leaving the Sterling mansion in a state of shock. For 10 seconds no one moved. Then the spell broke. It started with Julian Thorne, the investor Marcus had been trying to impress all night, the man whose approval Marcus had prioritized over his wife's feelings. Julian placed his champagne glass on a passing waiter's tray. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Cancel the Sterling contract," Julian said loudly, not caring who heard him. "Yes, immediately. The logistics deal is dead. And sell my short positions on their stock. It's going to plummet by morning." Marcus scrambled to his feet, adjusting his disheveled suit. "Julian, wait! You can't be serious. This is a personal matter. It has nothing to do with business." Julian looked at Marcus with a mixture of pity and disgust. "Marcus, you just publicly abused the daughter of Arthur Blackwood. Arthur Blackwood owns the shipping lines we use. He owns the bank that holds your loans. He sits on the board of the Regulatory Commission. You're not just a bad husband, you're a radioactive business liability." Julian walked out. That was the signal. The other guests, sensing the stench of death on the Sterling name, began to flee. "I have an early morning," the mayor muttered, rushing past Victoria without making eye contact. "Lovely party. But we must dash," said the CEO of the rival firm, suppressing a grin. He knew his stock was about to go up. Within 20 minutes, the Gold and Glory gala was empty. The band had packed up and left. The uneaten caviar sat warming under the lights. The only people left were Marcus, Victoria, and the cleaning staff who were awkwardly sweeping up the confetti. Victoria collapsed onto a velvet sofa, clutching her chest. But this time, unlike her feigned shock earlier, the fear was real. "You idiot!" she hissed at her son. "You absolute incompetent fool!" Marcus was pacing the room, running his hands through his hair. "Me? You? You're the one who mocked her. You're the one who called her a nobody. The girl from the coffee shop, remember? I was protecting our image," Victoria shrieked. "How was I supposed to know she was a Blackwood? Why would a billionaire heiress act like a peasant? She scrubbed her own floors, Marcus. She cooked her own meals." "She was humble," Marcus shouted back, the realization of what he had lost crashing down on him. "She was everything we aren't, and we hated her for it." He pulled out his phone. No service. "What?" Marcus frowned. He checked the Wi-Fi. Nothing. The landline on the side table rang. It was a harsh, jarring sound in the empty hall. Victoria stared at it. "Answer it." Marcus walked over and picked up the receiver. "Hello?" "Mr. Sterling." A crisp, professional voice spoke on the other end. "This is Jacob Stone, legal counsel for Blackwood Global." "Listen, Mr. Stone," Marcus began, trying to summon his CEO voice. "I need to speak to my wife. I need to go to the hospital." "That won't be happening," the lawyer said calmly. "I am calling to inform you that your security clearance at Sterling Logistics has been revoked pending an investigation into embezzlement." "Embezzlement?" Marcus nearly dropped the phone. "I own the company. I haven't embezzled anything." "Mr. Blackwood's auditors, who just acquired a controlling interest in your debt from the bank 10 minutes ago, seem to think there are discrepancies. Your assets have been frozen, Mr. Sterling. All of them. Including your personal accounts and the corporate cards." "You can't do this," Marcus screamed. "It's already done. Furthermore, you are being served with a restraining order. If you come within 500 feet of Ilara Blackwood or the hospital, you will be arrested. Have a good night." The line went dead. Marcus stood there, the receiver dangling from his hand. The lights in the ballroom flickered once, then twice. "What is it?" Victoria asked, her voice small. "What did they say?" "They froze the accounts, Mother," Marcus whispered, staring into the darkness. "They bought our debt." Before Victoria could scream, the lights went out completely. The entire estate was plunged into darkness. "They cut the power," Marcus said, his voice void of emotion. In the dark, the only light came from the moonlight streaming through the high windows, illuminating the spot on the floor where Subeo had stood crying an hour ago. "We have to fix this," Victoria said, her voice rising in panic in the dark. "She loved you, Marcus. She was obsessed with you. Women like that. They forgive. You just need to get to her. Remind her of the baby. Use the baby, Marcus." Marcus looked at his mother in the shadows. For the first time, he saw her not as the matriarch of an empire, but as a desperate, cruel old woman who had led him off a cliff. "I can't get to her," Marcus said. "But I know who can." "Who?" "Her best friend," Marcus said, a plan forming in his desperate mind. "Sarah. The one we didn't invite because you said she looked too urban. Sarah is the only one Subeo listens to." "Call her," Victoria urged. "I can't," Marcus said, looking at his dead phone. "I have to drive to the city. I have to beg a barista for help." Marcus grabbed his car keys and ran out of the darkened mansion. He jumped into his Porsche, pushing the start button. The engine roared to life. He sped down the driveway, his tires screeching. He thought he had a plan. He thought he could manipulate the situation one last time. He thought this was just another business deal gone wrong that he could charm his way out of. But as he merged onto the highway, driving recklessly toward the city hospital where he assumed Sarah would be, he didn't notice the black SUV that pulled out from a side road, following him with its lights off. Arthur Blackwood had promised to hunt him, and Arthur Blackwood never broke a promise. The drive to St. Jude's Hospital was a blur of red lights and reckless lane changes. Marcus's mind was racing, constructing a narrative that would save him. He would tell Subeo he had a panic attack. He would say the stress of the company had broken him. He would blame his mother. He would do whatever it took to get back into the Blackwood orbit. He screeched into the hospital parking lot, leaving his Porsche crookedly parked across 2 handicap spaces, a habit he hadn't yet unlearned. He ran toward the emergency room entrance, but a wall of uniformed police officers and private security guards blocked the sliding doors. The press was already there. News vans from CNN, Fox, and local stations were setting up satellites. The headline on the chyron of a nearby van read, Titan's daughter hospitalized after incident at Sterling Gala. Marcus pulled his coat collar up, trying to hide his face, and slipped around the side of the building toward the smoking area. He knew Sarah, Subeo's barista friend, smoked when she was stressed. It was a long shot, but it was all he had. And there she was. Sarah was pacing near the bike racks, looking at her phone. She wore a faded denim jacket and combat boots, the same outfit Marcus had often sneered at when Subeo invited her over for coffee. "Sarah!" Marcus hissed, stepping out of the shadows. Sarah jumped, her hand instinctively going to her pocket. When she saw it was Marcus, her expression didn't turn to fear. It turned to ice. "You have a lot of nerve showing up here, Marcus," she said, her voice dangerously calm. "Listen to me," Marcus pleaded, stepping closer. "They won't let me in. You have to help me. Subeo needs me. I'm the father of her child. You're the reason she's in critical care," Sarah spat. Her blood pressure spiked so high she nearly had a stroke. The doctors are trying to stop preterm labor. I didn't know," Marcus stammered, sweating. "Look, Sarah, I know you don't like me. I know you think I'm a snob, but I can make it worth your while. I still have assets. I can write you a check. Just get me into that room. Let me talk to her for 5 minutes. If she sees me, she'll calm down. She loves me." Sarah looked at him, tilting her head. A strange smile played on her lips. "You think you can buy me, Marcus?" "Everyone has a price," Marcus said, desperate. "Name yours. 10,000. 20? Sarah laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. "You really have no idea who you've been dealing with this whole time, do you? What are you talking about? You pour coffee for a living." Sarah reached into her denim jacket and pulled out a badge. It wasn't a hospital badge. It was a security clearance ID for Blackwood Global Intelligence Division. "I don't pour coffee, Marcus," Sarah said, her voice dropping an octave, losing the girl-next-door inflection she had used for 3 years. "I am the head of executive protection for the Blackwood family. I've been assigned to Ilara, Subeo, since the day she left home to find herself. Every time you insulted her, every time you made her cry, I was there, watching, recording." Marcus took a step back, his blood running cold. You're a spy?" "I'm a bodyguard," Sarah corrected. "And the only reason you still have your teeth right now is because Subeo made me promise not to hurt you, unless physically necessary. But that promise expired the moment you endangered the air." Marcus turned to run, but 2 men stepped out from behind the hedgerow. They were the same men from the black SUV that had followed him. "Mr. Blackwood wants a word," Sarah said, putting her badge away. "And unlike the party, this isn't a social call." The men grabbed Marcus by the arms. He didn't fight. He was dragged through a side service entrance, down a long, sterile corridor, and thrown into a waiting room that had been cleared of all other patients. Sitting in a plastic chair in the center of the room was Arthur Blackwood. He wasn't yelling. He was peeling an orange. The normalcy of the action made it terrifying. "Sit," Arthur said, without looking up. Marcus collapsed into the chair opposite him. "Mr. Blackwood, please. I love her." Arthur finished peeling the orange. He ate a slice slowly. "I looked into your company's financials, Marcus. You've been cooking the books for 2 years to hide losses from your mother. You've been using Subeo's credit, the small savings she had, to pay off gambling debts. Is that love?" "I was going to pay it back." "You were going to drain her dry and discard her," Arthur stated flatly. "But that's not why you're here. You're here because I have a proposition." "Anything," Marcus gasped. "I'll do anything." "Subeo is awake," Arthur said. "She is stabilizing, but she is heartbroken. She still, somehow, believes there is good in you. She thinks you acted out of stress. She wants to see you. Hope flared in Marcus's chest. She wants to see me. Oh, thank God. I can fix this. Let me see her. However, Arthur continued, his eyes hardening, if you walk through those doors, you have a choice. You can go in there and apologize, and try to be a father. If you do that, I will not destroy you completely. I will leave you with enough money to live a modest life in obscurity. But you will never touch the Blackwood fortune. You will sign a post-nuptial agreement tonight, waiving all rights to her inheritance. Marcus hesitated. The greed in his eyes flickered. Modest life? Or, Arthur said, you can walk away right now. I will give you $5 million in cash. A clean break. You sign divorce papers. You give up parental rights. And you never see her or the baby again. You take the money and you run. It was the ultimate test, the test Subeo had always wanted him to pass. Marcus looked at the door to Subeo's room. Then he looked at Arthur. $5 million? Marcus asked, his voice trembling. Cash? Arthur's face didn't move, but his eyes died a little. Wire transfer, within the hour. Marcus licked his lips. He thought about the crying, pregnant woman in the next room. He thought about the baby. Then he thought about the debt, the crumbling sterling reputation, and the $5 million that could start a new life in the Cayman Islands. I'll take the money, Marcus whispered. Arthur nodded slowly. He pulled a folder from his jacket. Sign here. Marcus signed the papers with a shaking hand. He relinquished his rights to his wife and his unborn son for a check. Done, Marcus said, standing up. Where's the money? Transferred, Arthur said, checking his phone. Now, there is one thing you should know before you leave. What? Marcus asked, feeling a surge of relief. He had won. He had escaped with a fortune. Arthur pointed to the large mirror on the wall. That's a two-way mirror, Marcus, and the intercom was on. Marcus spun around. Behind the glass, lying in a hospital bed, Subeo watched him. She wasn't crying anymore. The tears had stopped. Her face was a mask of pure, unadulterated realization. She had heard every word. She had heard him price her and their child at $5 million. She needed to see it, Arthur said, standing up. She needed to know that you are exactly who I said you were. Marcus pounded on the glass. Subeo, no, it was a trick. I did it for us. But Subeo simply turned her head away, closing her eyes. Get him out of my sight, Arthur commanded. Marcus stumbled out of the hospital, clutching the check in his digital banking app like a lifeline. He felt a sick mixture of shame and elation. He had lost his wife, but he was rich. He was free. He checked into a luxury hotel downtown, ordering a bottle of whiskey to calm his nerves. He planned to fly to Zurich in the morning. He turned on the TV in his hotel room. Breaking news flashed across the screen. Marcus froze. The video playing on the screen was shaky. It had been filmed on a cell phone by one of the catering staff at the gala, but the audio was crystal clear. It showed Marcus throwing the photo album. It's garbage! Get out! You've done enough damage for one night! The clip cut to Arthur Blackwood entering the room. You just humiliated the sole heiress to the Blackwood empire. The news anchor's voice came back. This video, leaked just an hour ago, has already garnered 20 million views. The man in the video, Marcus Sterling, CEO of Sterling Logistics, is currently under investigation for embezzlement, but the internet has already delivered its verdict. Marcus grabbed his phone. His social media notifications were exploding, thousands of comments per second. Monster! How could he treat a pregnant woman like that? Boycott Sterling Logistics. I hope he rots. Then a new notification popped up. It was an email from the bank. Subject: account freeze notice. What? Marcus yelled. Arthur said he transferred it. He logged into his account. The $5 million was there, but the account was locked. He called the bank, screaming at the automated system until he got a human. Mr. Sterling, the bank manager said, sounding terrified, we received a federal warrant. All funds associated with the Sterling name have been frozen as evidence in the embezzlement investigation. The $5 million you just received, it's been flagged as proceeds from an illicit settlement and seized by the DOJ. That was a gift, Marcus shrieked. Arthur Blackwood gave it to me. Mr. Blackwood alerted the authorities that you accepted a bribe to flee the jurisdiction, the manager said. He cooperated fully with the investigation. Marcus dropped the phone. He had been played. Arthur hadn't just tested him. He had baited a trap. By accepting the money to leave his family, Marcus had admitted to a character flaw that Arthur weaponized legally. The money was the bait, and Marcus had clamped his jaws right onto the hook. There was a knock at the hotel door. Marcus looked through the peephole. It wasn't room service. It was the police. Marcus Sterling, a voice boomed. Open up! We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of fraud, embezzlement, and spousal abandonment. Marcus backed away toward the balcony. He looked out at the city lights. Just yesterday, he had been a king. He had a beautiful wife who loved him, a mother who doted on him, and a company. Now, he had nothing. Not even the $5 million. He opened the door. As the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, the officer, a young woman who looked vaguely like Subeo, leaned in. My sister watched that video, the officer whispered with disgust. You're going to have a hard time in holding, Mr. Sterling. As Marcus was led out of the hotel, heavily handcuffed, the paparazzi were waiting. The flashes of the cameras were blinding. Marcus, did you really sell your child for $5 million? Marcus, look this way. And then he saw her. Standing by a black limousine parked across the street was Victoria Sterling, his mother. She wasn't in handcuffs. She was holding a press statement. She looked at Marcus as he was shoved into the police cruiser. She didn't wave. She turned to the microphones. I am devastated by my son's actions, Victoria told the cameras, throwing him under the bus to save her own skin. I had no idea of his cruelty or his financial crimes. I am stepping down as chairwoman, and I am cooperating fully with the Blackwood family to ensure justice is served. Marcus watched through the window of the police car as his mother betrayed him, just as he had betrayed Subeo. The car pulled away. 5 years later, the morning sun hit the glass facade of the Blackwood Tower in Manhattan, turning the building into a pillar of fire. On the top floor, in a corner office that overlooked the city like a throne room, Subeo Blackwood stood adjusting the cuff of her silk blazer. She wasn't the timid woman in the ill-fitting maternity dress anymore. At 29, Subeo was the CEO of the Blackwood Foundation, a multi-billion-dollar philanthropic arm that funded children's hospitals and legal aid for underprivileged women. She wore a tailored cream suit that cost more than Marcus Sterling's car had been worth. Her hair was cut into a sharp, chic bob, and her posture was steel. Ms. Blackwood? Subeo turned. Sarah, still her head of security, but now also her closest confidant and godmother to her son, stood in the doorway. The car is ready, Elle, Sarah said, checking her watch. And he is on the schedule for 10:00 a.m. Are you sure you want to do this? You don't owe him anything, not even a goodbye. Subeo looked at the framed photo on her desk. It was a picture of a 4-year-old boy with curly brown hair and bright green eyes, laughing as he held a toy airplane. Leo, her son. The son Marcus had sold for $5 million. I'm not doing it for him, Sarah, Subeo said. her voice steady. I'm doing it for Leo. I need to look the monster in the eye one last time to make sure he's really gone. I need to close the door so tight it never opens again. Sarah nodded, her expression grim. I'll be right outside the glass. If he even twitches, I pull the plug. I know. Subeo smiled softly. Let's go. The visit. The Clinton Correctional Facility was a stark contrast to the Sterling estate. It smelled of bleach, stale sweat, and despair. Subeo sat in the private visitation room. She didn't fidget. She didn't check her phone. She sat with her hands folded on the cold metal table, waiting. The heavy steel door buzzed and clanked open. Marcus Sterling shuffled in. The transformation was shocking. The man who had once sneered at waitstaff and worn Italian suits was gone. In his place was a gaunt, greying man in a bright orange jumpsuit. His hair was thinning, his skin was sallow from lack of sunlight, and his eyes were hollow. He looked 20 years older than 37. He sat down, the chains on his wrists rattling against the table. He looked at Subeo, and for a moment shame flickered across his face. But then the old Marcus, the manipulator, tried to surface. Subeo, he croaked, his voice raspy. You look incredible. Money treats you well. It's not the money, Marcus, Subeo said coolly. It's the freedom. Being free of a narcissist does wonders for the skin. Marcus flinched. He tried to lean forward, but the chains held him back. I saw you on the news last week, opening that new pediatric wing. It's good work. It is, Subeo agreed. We named it the Leo Blackwood Center, after my son. Our son, Marcus corrected quickly, desperation creeping into his tone. Subeo, I've had time to think. 5 years in this cage. It changes a man. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. You didn't just hurt me, Marcus, Subeo interrupted, her voice devoid of sympathy. You humiliated me. You tried to erase me. And then you sold our child. Do you remember the price? 5 million. That's what your family was worth to you. I was trapped, Marcus pleaded. Your father, he set me up. He backed me into a corner. He gave you a choice, Subeo corrected. You chose the money. But that's not why I'm here. Marcus looked hopeful. Why are you here? To get me out? I can help you run the foundation. I have ideas, Subeo. I can be useful. I can be a father. Does Leo ask about me? Subeo let out a short, dry laugh. Leo doesn't know you exist, Marcus, and he never will. To him, father is a word he uses for the grandfather who reads him bedtime stories every night. She reached into her designer bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. She slid it across the table. I'm here for this. Marcus looked down at the paper. It was a termination of parental rights form, fully finalized by the court, but it required one final acknowledgement signature to prevent any future parole hearings from involving the child. If you sign this, Subeo said, I will deposit $20,000 into your commissary account. You can buy all the ramen and cigarettes you want for the next 10 years. You can live like a king in here. And if I don't, Marcus challenged, trying to find leverage. If you don't, Subeo leaned in, her eyes turning into the same glacial ice as her father's, then I will use my resources to ensure that every appeal you file is buried in paperwork for decades. I will make sure you are transferred to a maximum security facility in the middle of nowhere. I will make your life, which is already a nightmare, a living hell. Marcus stared at her. He looked for the weak, crying girl he had married. He looked for the woman who sought his approval. She was gone. In front of him sat a titan. You really hate me, don't you? Marcus whispered. I don't hate you, Marcus, Subeo said, standing up. I pity you. You had everything. You had a wife who adored you. You were going to be a father, and you threw it all away for a watch and a mother who doesn't even visit you. The mention of his mother broke him. Victoria Sterling had not visited him once. She had moved to Florida, changed her name, and was living off a small pension, refusing to acknowledge she had a son in prison. Marcus looked at the paper. He looked at the woman who was now out of his league in every universe. With a shaking hand, he picked up the pen. He signed his name. "Goodbye, Marcus," Subeo said, taking the paper back. "Subeo, wait!" he called out as she turned to the door. Do you ever think about the good times before the money?" Subeo paused at the door. She looked back over her shoulder. "No," she said, "because I realized they were never good. They were just the calm before you showed me who you really were." The buzzer sounded. Subeo walked out. Marcus Sterling sat alone in the metal room, weeping into his orange sleeves. The encounter on the steps, Subeo walked out of the prison and into the bright, fresh air. Sarah was waiting by the limousine, holding the door open. But before Subeo could get in, a figure emerged from the bus stop bench near the parking lot. It was an old woman. She wore a stained coat and carried a plastic grocery bag. Her face was wrinkled, her hair grey and unkempt. It took Subeo a moment to recognize her. Victoria Sterling. She had come to visit, it seemed, but had lost her nerve at the last minute. Or perhaps she was just lurking, hoping for a handout. Victoria saw Subeo. Her eyes widened. She took in the limousine, the security, the radiance of her former daughter-in-law. "Subeo," Victoria rasped, stepping forward. "Subeo, dear?" Sarah immediately stepped between them, her hand raised. "Back away, Mom." "No, Sarah, it's okay," Subeo said, signaling Sarah to stand down. She looked at the woman who had once made her feel like dirt on a shoe. "Subeo," Victoria said, forcing a trembling smile. "Oh, look at you. You look successful. I always knew you had it in you." "No, you didn't, Victoria," Subeo said calmly. "You called me a peasant. You mocked my pregnancy." "I was foolish," Victoria cried, wringing her hands. "I was misled by Marcus. He was a bad influence. But family is family, right? I am Leo's grandmother. I have rights. I have a desire to see him." Subeo looked at this pathetic creature. She felt no anger, only a profound sense of distance. "You aren't family, Victoria," Subeo said. "Family is the people who catch you when you fall, not the ones who push you. And as for Leo, he has a grandmother. My father's sister, Aunt Claire. She bakes him cookies and tells him he's the smartest boy in the world. She doesn't care about his pedigree or his clothes." "I have nothing, Subeo," Victoria begged, tears streaking through her cheap makeup. "They took the house. They took the pension. I'm living in a studio apartment. I can barely afford heat. Please, for old times' sake, just a little help." Subeo reached into her purse. Victoria's eyes lit up with greed. She expected a check, a wad of cash, something substantial. Subeo pulled out a card. "This is the number for the Blackwood Shelter for Women," Subeo said, pressing the card into Victoria's hand. "They have hot meals, job training, and counseling. They can help you get back on your feet, but you'll have to work for it. No handouts." Victoria stared at the card in horror. A shelter? You want me to go to a homeless shelter?" "It's where I would have been if my father hadn't arrived that night," Subeo said. "It's a good place, Victoria. Humility is a good teacher. You should try it." Subeo turned and got into the car. "Subeo, you can't leave me here!" Victoria screamed at the tinted windows. The engine purred to life. As the car pulled away, Subeo didn't look back. She picked up her phone and dialed a number. "Hi, Papa," she said, her voice warm and bright. "Yes, it's done. I'm coming home. Tell Leo I'm bringing ice cream." And that is the story of Subeo, Marcus, and the birthday party that changed everything. It's a brutal reminder that the way we treat people when we think they have no power is the truest test of our character. Marcus and Victoria Sterling thought wealth made them untouchable. They thought Subeo's silence was weakness. But they forgot the oldest rule of karma. The wheel always turns. Subeo didn't just survive, she thrived because she remained true to herself. She didn't let their cruelty turn her heart into stone. She just turned it into a fortress to protect the people who actually mattered. As for Marcus, he learned too late that the most expensive thing in the world isn't a diamond watch or a luxury car. It's the love of a good woman and the laughter of a child. He traded the priceless for the cheap, and he paid the ultimate cost. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who thought they were better than you? Or have you ever seen instant karma hit someone who deserved it? Let me know your story in the comments down below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story and want to see more dramas about betrayal, justice, and redemption, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind, because you never know who you're really talking to. See you in the next video.